matches go.
We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Reports come out say Andy Ruiz Jr. has not officially signed off to fight in Saudi Arabia, and there could be some problems as far as the rematch happening. Dun dun dun. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, and the Patreon family. We work it. Now, more trouble in paradise. To me, this has been a pretty bad year for DAZN in terms of high profile, highly publicized fights falling apart, fizzling apart, potentially, that whole thing. Fights like Canelo Kovalev in deep talks, and then it went nowhere. Kovalev's now fighting a dangerous fight in Anthony Yard. You have fights with Joshua Miller that fell apart over drug testing. They said Canelo was in serious negotiations with Demetrius Andrade. Now we haven't heard anything. The list goes on. Luis Ortiz was allegedly sought after as an opponent to replace Gerald Miller for Anthony Joshua. Monies were discussed, and that ultimately went nowhere. And then enter Andy Ruiz. He accepted the task. He accepted whatever the initial paycheck was. Now, they immediately triggered a rematch days after the first loss and the first fight happened. Team Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn, he announced that they're triggering the rematch. As you guys can see, look at all these articles. Report, Andy Ruiz Jr. will not sign off on Anthony Joshua rematch. Andy Ruiz has yet to sign off on Saudi Arabia rematch with Joshua, claims trainer. Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz still have to rethink Saudi Arabia fight. Andy Ruiz yet to sign off. Andy Ruiz makes a purse demand before signing off on Anthony Joshua fight. So, look, Joshua rematch in doubt. It's not looking good. And I don't think DAZN is really, if they're going to get the fight, I don't think there's a good look if this happens to them. Andy Ruiz makes purse demand before signing off on the Anthony Joshua rematch. It says, let's pull this up. Andy Ruiz is reportedly set to demand a huge increase in his purse before he signs off on the rematch with Joshua in Saudi Arabia. Matchroom Boxing confirmed the highly anticipated rematch that will take place in the Middle East December 7th, but The Athletic claims that Ruiz Jr. is yet to sign off on the deal. They say the champ who stunned Joshua to claim the heavyweight title June 1st is not expected to put pen to paper unless he is guaranteed, quote, a significantly higher purse than the $9 million he is guaranteed to receive. It is believed that the rematch terms dictating Ruiz's purse were already laid out in the contract for the initial fight, right? However, Ruiz Jr. is now seemingly pushing for a greater financial reward as he puts the belts he won from Joshua on the line since the shock win first time. The Mexican was hurried into the first bout, late replacement. And this is Joshua and his pops. But now he is demanding greater financial reward for his effort as the pair gets set for a money spinning trip to the Middle East, which has not gone down well with fans. With Saudi organizers set to bankroll the fight with $40 million plus, I heard, give or take, for a site fee, Ruiz will instead make a fixed fee based on the rematch clause from the first contract. He is now believed to be digging his heels in, trying to gain a larger cut of the huge revenue the fight is set to draw in. So, in layman's terms, before he even beat Joshua in the contract, they stipulated that in the rematch, he would only get $9 million. But the way it's blown up for Andy Ruiz, he's been on Jimmy Kimmel, first Mexican heavyweight of all time. He set a lot of history. He met up with the president of Mexico, and the fans really embraced him. Now he doesn't, with all things considered, he doesn't believe that's fair. He doesn't believe it's fair to get, I understand he signed a contract, but he's like, nah, that's a raw deal, especially since you look at it, Saudi Arabia the tycoons and the business people, the organizers, promoters over there are willing to shell out almost $50 million or roughly $50 million just for the site fee, not including Sky Sports and DAZN, whatever they throw into the pot for the rights to secure the fight on their network or whatever network picks it up for the US, right? And that, that makes this fight worth a lot of money. And you have Ruiz, who per his contract before he even won, Eddie Hearn is gouging him and has him locked into only making $9 million, which would, in the grand scheme of things, be a small portion of the large pot that's now available. And I understand contracts and I understand legalities, but if you look at it from being realistic in terms of outside of just, hey, I have this in writing contract, it's bullshit. And I don't blame Andy Ruiz and his team for trying to find ways to circumvent this from happening and allowing their fighter to get that minimal amount against what is being put up for this fight. Shout out to the sun.co.uk. Links will be in the description. Show me the money. Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua rematch in doubt as the Mexican, quote, refuses to sign the contract amid a purse bid. And this is another. It said, despite Ruiz agreeing in terms before the original bout, he now wants more than £8 million that he originally signed up for. Saudi investors stumped up to, they're saying £83 million, which would be almost, that'd be like 90 something million dollars. So this is looking sketch, to say the least. Andy Ruiz has not confirmed the fight. The only people that have is DAZN. So this is just a bad look. Here, I did a video about it, but let's talk about it real quick. Andy Ruiz on his verified post, this is the first thing he's saying since the Saudi Arabia announcement. Ready for anything that come my way. You can't scare me with a good time. Blessings to all my people, fans, family, everyone that has God in their heart. Much love, and remember, dreams come true. And the Mexican flag emojis. So he's just keeping people pacified and saying, hey, I'm still here. I'm not shaking. I'm not afraid of this. And he's just, he's just letting people know, hold on. But he didn't say nothing about the rematch or nothing. That's his first post since they announced the fight. Look, they got flyers made. This is just sloppy on behalf of DAZN and Matchroom. They have, I understand you have a contract that says this, but this is happening in Saudi Arabia. So some people think a way out could be the fact that this is a high level danger for travel purposes. If you're from outside of the region, it's a level 2 out of 4 in terms of the travel advisories. So he might be able to say, hey, I did agree to this on paper, but I didn't know they were going to take it over to some place that has a level 2 danger rating. And, they can find that. And that's what it looks like they're doing, unless he renegotiates. So DAZN putting out this and this is just sloppy from Rematch Room and everybody involved, that released this, because you can't really advertise it if the contract's not even signed and you only have one side promoting the fight. That doesn't sound good. Like Anthony Yarde and Kovalev got over the line, and both fighters have publicized it. Anthony Yarde's talking about, Kovalev's talking about, Main Event's talking about it, Frank Warren's talking about it. So that's good. That means everyone's in agreement. Cool, we got to fight. But this is something different. You got Andy Ruiz Jr. side, they ain't saying nothing. PBC ain't released nothing. So it's just Joshua's side. Not a good look. Listen, I've talked about this time and time again for quite some time. The common denominator is Team Joshua and Eddie Hearns in Rematch Room, period. Same thing that went on with Deontay Wilder. Some people for years, they argued who was the culprit between the fight not happening. What caused the fight not to happen, right? Was it Joshua? Was it his side? Or was it Matchroom? Or was it Wilder? I think this is an answer because, again, the common denominator is always Eddie Hearn and Team Joshua. Anthony Joshua, he said, neutral grounds, let's go. They're posting it, but even though they have a contract, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like they jumped the gun. Even if I don't know if the fight's going to happen in Saudi Arabia now. I don't know if there's a way around it. I don't know exactly what the contract stipulates. They're going to have to work that out. But nonetheless, it's not a good thing when you have a mega fight and people are expecting an anticipated fight, but it's not even really being promoted evenly from both parties. That shows you there's trouble in paradise. And this is all stems from, a bullshit sticking point in the first contract that stipulated that they can determine how much a fixed flat rate to give Andy Ruiz $9 million roughly for the rematch. So the whole rematch, if you think about it, the whole rematch is desired because of Andy Ruiz's work. Joshua put on a career worst performance. He got dropped multiple times, didn't look good in the fight. He had one moment of glory, but it was quickly stolen from him when Andy Ruiz fought back. So Andy Ruiz Jr., he's bringing in a different demographic, Mexican-American fans, American fans, the country of Mexico. He has a lot of people riding with him based on everything that's happening. Everyone's like, rejoicing, and it's a fresh blood, and you're the upset, you're the underdog. And now you're trying to limit him to a sticking point in a contract. And I look at it like this. Eddie Hearn, it's not his job to necessarily look after a fighter who's not one of his own. But that doesn't mean you have to fuck people over just from a ethical, moral standpoint. Andy Ruiz is now worth, based on what happened, winning an ESPN award, all this shit, he's now worth more than what was promised before. See, and this is the thing. When he signed the contract, he could have just won a decision. So if he won a decision, maybe $9 million would be good, because it's just a rematch. But the emphatic way that he beat Joshua, I think, had a lot of people talking, and it made it go viral. Just like I told you, I didn't see Anthony Joshua topping Wilder's going viral when he 2 weeks before knocked out Dominic Breazeale. I said if he does go viral, it's going to be for the wrong reasons. And this was before the fight with Ruiz, and I was 100% on point, because he did go viral, but it was for the wrong reasons. It was because he lost. He's no longer undefeated, and he got knocked out. So a lot's changed. So it's hard to, I can understand Andy Ruiz initially signing a contract for $9 million because it was a 5-week. He only had a certain amount of time to prepare in general. So he was like, yeah, da. And now they're trying to hold him to this, knowing his star power has risen immensely, not just for beating Joshua, but how he beat him. But now, they're not trying to look out and make this any easier. They want to fight in Saudi Arabia, claim it neutral grounds. But I think Joshua has ties to UAE, and more so that region, more so than Andy Ruiz. And then on top of that, you don't want to pay him. And listen, do I think Andy Ruiz is afraid of fighting Joshua? Absolutely not. If he was afraid, he wouldn't have took the first fight. That's just common sense. Why would you have full time? They still have time to prepare, because the fight would be in December, November, late November, December. If you were willing to take this fight the first time with 5 weeks notice and ill time to prepare, and then you knocked him out, and then you dropped him 4 times, made him quit. You showed you had the faster hands. You showed you're the better chin and more durable. Why the fuck would you be afraid to rematch him? So, I know a lot of the man fans, the radical fans of Joshua, they're going to search and look for all these ways to try to make Ruiz look like he's scared of the rematch or trying to hold the belts hostage, this type of stuff. That's completely absurd. Again, you wouldn't take the fight on 5 weeks notice with little time to prepare, and you wouldn't have this outcome that you see on the screen if he was afraid of Joshua. So I don't think that at all. And he said it in his post. He said, don't tease me with a good time, or whatever he said. So I don't think he's afraid of Joshua. I think it's just a matter of he wants to be treated evenly and financially compensated for his newfound stardom and fame. But again, Eddie Hearn, the common denominator, rematch room, slave room, they're trying to lock him in so only their side wins no matter what. They'll win financially, or they'll win financially and Joshua will win. But even if Joshua loses, they're still making a lot of money. So they're trying to hog the money, basically greed. And again, although it's not Eddie Hearns' obligation to make sure a fighter is taken care of that's not one of his own, I do think it's his obligation to take care of his own fighter, and that's Anthony Joshua. That being said, Anthony Joshua he is the one that needs this rematch because he needs vindication. He needs to get and try to extract revenge. If he cannot get revenge, then that hurts his brand. If somehow this turns into a legal matter, then he doesn't get to fight him for that reason. That hurts him because these two need to fight each other, especially Joshua. He's the one that seeks redemption. Andy Ruiz, he's not really losing. He wasn't even being considered the upper echelon of heavyweights until this moment happened. So his life has turned upside down, flipped and turned upside down. He's winning regardless. The person that really needs this rematch more so to me is Joshua, because he has to prove it was a fluke and prove, okay, a focused Joshua can beat this guy. So I get it. You have him under contract and you're trying to hold him to it. But this is a bad look, because if it comes to a legal matter and they try to weasel out of it, say, oh, we're afraid to travel to Saudi Arabia, it's a level 2 danger, or some other provisional clause or whatever, you're just stalling out the process and it's hurting the fans. The location's already hurting a lot of fans. If you live in Mexico, you live in California, where Andy Ruiz is from, how opportune or how convenient is it for you to go to Saudi Arabia? And the venue only holds 6,000 to 7,000. I heard they still building it, so this whole thing sounds kind of shady, to be honest. But I think they should do what's greater for the greater good of boxing, and Joshua, he needs the redemption. Andy Ruiz is already living his best life, buying cars, buying his mama a crib. He's not even supposed to be here. Joshua has to redeem himself. Andy Ruiz doesn't. He did exactly what he was supposed to do in his heart. He actually, not what he was supposed to do. He exceeded expectations. He did better than people thought he was going to do. Joshua was the one that looked terrible. So by not doing the rematch or potentially having this draw out because you want to rob Andy Ruiz and make sure he don't get no money, and you guys bank just greed basically, then you're potentially putting off the fight, and it hurts Joshua and it hurts you, because he's the one that needs to prove this to himself that he can do it. It's already bad enough the location, because Joshua said he will fight in Mexico with Ruiz's uncle, as the ref. He said he'll fight in New York, the scene of the crime. And now he's going against that with this Saudi Arabia. So that's already bad. But this is a bad look. Again, it's not Eddie Hearn's job to take care of Andy Ruiz, but it is his job to get his fighter back in the situation to reclaim his throne or glory, So the longer this goes out, here's another thing, because, on Unpack, I like to give you guys detailed thoughts. We unpack coming to you live, right? Other thing is this: the longer this prolongs, Ruiz runs a chance of possibly getting stripped of a belt if they can't agree and he doesn't fight a mandatory. If he doesn't fight his mandatory, then he can get stripped, just like Canelo versus Derevyanchenko. You didn't agree by the deadline. You didn't fight him. You didn't agree to fight him. You get stripped. You didn't fight Charlo. WBC strips you and, makes up a fake title for you, right? That being said, the longer this goes on, Andy Ruiz and Joshua bullshit, they run the chance of one of the belts being stripped because he cannot face a mandatory within a certain deadline. So that also makes it worse for Joshua, because you lost all your belts. There's only 2 people with belts in the division, both Al Heyman fighters, Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder and Andy Ruiz. You lost every single one of your belts to Andy Ruiz. And if he gets stripped, then that dispersed the belts, like the Infinity Stones and Avengers. The Infinity Stones, one's in Vision's head, one's in this planet, one's on Earth, so it dispersed the belts. And then now it's a free for all. So even if you rematch him, you're not going to reclaim everything that you lost in the fight. So that's a bad look. To me, that's a bad look. So Eddie Hearn, for a variety of reasons, even though his job is not to take care of Andy Ruiz, I feel he would want to rectify this and do what's right and do what's fair for the fans, for boxing, for his own fighter, but also so he doesn't waste more time. Because if they're having this standoff and they feel they can do it, and you waste more time, you're running the risk of being stripped of one of the belts. Now, by the time it's all resolved and figured out, Ruiz might have one less belt. And then now Joshua, even if he beats Ruiz, won't have everything that he had before he lost to Ruiz. And then there'll be, an IBF belt and then the 2 highest ranked people would be scrapping for the IBF belt. So now you're gonna have a vacated belt and someone else potentially getting to fight for it. So, you know, this whole thing's becoming a mess. And like I said, the common denominator is Anthony Joshua's team. I think they've been very prima donna. It goes without saying. Everything that Wilder complained about, you have other fighters who are dealing with the same team complaining about. Everybody. That tells you exactly what the problem is. Joseph Parker, yes, he fought Anthony Joshua, but it took months to negotiate. Joseph Parker wanted 50-50. Just research all this. I remember. Joseph Parker's team wanted 50-50. Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua, they overvalue Joshua, act like he's this big star everywhere, even though he's a big star in the UK, not so much in the US, right? Clarissa Shields has done better numbers on Showtime than Joshua has. Fact. Look it up. So anyway, the Joseph Parker negotiations, they did work out and they did end up fighting, but it took several months of back and forth and, oh, we're not giving you this, and Eddie Hearn's doing all these 40-minute interviews and, oh, this is ridiculous. And then Eddie Hearn talking about what Wilder wants and we'll never pay him 40% or 50-50, right? So Joseph Parker negotiations stalled out and took forever to reach an agreeable split or whatever. Finances. Deontay Wilder, we already know that's the most publicized one. 12.5 million flat, $50 million rejected from Team Joshua. Then they offered 17.5 and then end up fighting Povetkin. You know, just a bunch of bullshit. Luis Ortiz claimed he was lowballed and he never fought Joshua when Miller fell. Before the Miller fight was even announced, Dillian White was in negotiations for AJ, and he said he was lowballed and offered less money than he just got for Derek Chisora. And he said, that's bullshit. I just want what I'm worth. I just knocked out Lucas Brown. I hurt a former champion in Joseph Parker. Lucas Brown was a former champion. I knocked him out. And then I cleaned up my work with Derek Chisora in the rematch and knocked him out. And then you trying to pay me less than what you got Derek Chisora? Again, the common denominator, Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua. This is their cash cow, and they're trying to protect it by every means. And it's frankly, they're being greedy. Eddie Hearn did interviews this year and claims that he was offering Luis Ortiz. They really wanted to allegedly fight a southpaw when Gerald Miller failed a drug test. And Eddie Hearn claims that the offers got as high as like $7 million. So you mean to tell me you were going to offer Luis Ortiz to take the fight in lieu of Gerald Miller failing drug test? You were going to offer Luis Ortiz $7 million, but Ruiz, no matter how big he got, you got him locked into only making $2 million more than that, despite how big he's gotten, despite the fact that he's a champion. These numbers are funny. So I don't blame Ruiz for not signing the contract and trying to explore his options and see what he legally can do and see if he can legally get out of this, because that's bullshit. You're going to offer Luis Ortiz, who Wilder knocked out previously, you're going to offer him a late replacement fight with Joshua and allegedly offer him $7 million, but Ruiz only gets fucking $9 million, and the site fee in Saudi Arabia is over $40 million, let alone the other monies that this can get from ticket sales and merchandise and concession, you know, whatever else. Come on, bro. So Andy Ruiz, I think he's doing the right thing. There, you know, I get it. He signed a contract, but I don't see why you would want to go through all this instead of just doing what was right and appeasing boxing and appeasing the fans, and may the best man win. We unpack. Let me know what you guys think. Coming to you live. That's my thoughts. We working. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.